Hi there, welcome to my next YouTube video series. The subject this time is going to be what you will commonly find on YouTube under the designation of Streetcub. Streetcub as in CUB, Honda based. Mine will be based on a C70 and the key driver for me is that I want to achieve what you find on this sketch here. Sketch been made about a couple of weeks ago and is actually really nails the proportion that I would like. I realized meanwhile that this is rather elaborate to get to this, but let me explain. So today will be actually, if you so want, part 2, of which part 1 hasn't been filmed yet, but part 2 focuses on the fork. Reason being, I will explain in part 1 is what this is all about, what I'm trying to achieve in general, and why I am getting to part 2. So for now, please just take my word for it. I must shorten the fork in order to achieve this kind of positioning. The key feature, just to name it very shortly, is that the tire is higher than the actual seating position. And going through all of these modifications I will in part 1, but just take my word for it, in order to achieve this I must also shorten the front fork. Otherwise we're getting some weird angles, and then we're getting some weird seating angles and whatnot. So trust me, in order to keep this relatively harmonious and recognizable as a cup in the first place, shortening the fork is beneficial. I'm not saying it's necessary, but in my case that is basically what I feel makes my life easier and makes the result better. So I established by the choice of tire, I'm using a low height, what you call it in English, Niederquerschnitt. I'm using a tire with a smallish section. Section stands for, let me explain, width in relationship to height. So the height is 70% of the width. Is that simple enough? The height that you see on the side of the vehicle on the wheel is 70% in relationship to the width. Height, width. I'll explain what's the wheel and tires. So what I'm saying is that I'm using a wheel that has a smaller diameter, roughly about 80 centimeters lower than the rear tire, and that's maybe roughly about 60 millimeters in total diameter of the normal wheel. So if you take half of that, I'm gaining about 30 millimeters of height in here, and since I'm not running a fork mounted mudguard that goes through here, I'm gaining about another 20. So what I'm doing here, I am lowering the hinging point of the suspension by 55 millimeters. So let me take you out of the stand. And then we're looking at how this whole thing works. Now here is our original suspension unit. If I haven't said that, somehow I like to use as many original parts as possible. Just also for aesthetic reasons, for originality reasons, for availability, for modification and repair in the future. So, and I'm really fascinated that something that has been designed in around 1960, I think, has stood the time so well, and I'm always surprised when I separate these old motorbikes how good they really are and how clever they are. So I'm going to, for the time being, using this unit unmodified. I will just reposition it. So this here, this hole is the original mounting point of this hinge. Let me show you from the front. Sometimes you should have 3 hands. You see the unit that is still on the right side built inside, that is positioned like this. Pretty much like that. Yeah. That is bolted the top, that is bolted the bottom, and that's how it's positioned. All right. So I'm going to take this unit out, and I will position it forward and upwards. So we go forward and up. So we are extending the wheelbase pretty much by 55 millimeters. We're mounting it in the center of the fork and not backwards, so that extends the wheelbase, and then we have enough room for the suspension to actually activate. And that's why I'm filming today, because soon what I'm working on today will not be visible. So the first job for me was to find the theoretical center that I will relate to of this fork. So I'm using these points, which just for looking at it, I can pretty much say that they're in the center of the fork. This is the unit that holds it all together. So that's rather structurally important. And then here is the screw point for the little reflectors. And then I guide along here this highlight, this radius, this edge, so they're all kind of parallel. So this is how I established the theoretical center of this fork. I measured up by 55 millimeters approximately. Remember, this is broken, and in order for me to have a replaceable and repeatable dimension, I'm measuring from here 175 millimeters. Am I talking rubbish? Yeah. Measured from here, 175 millimeters, this will be my new point. And in order for this to be looking similar and original and being as solid as the original was, I will actually use a very similar method. Just for cosmetics, I'm going to use this little part. It's going to be turned, and I'm going to weld it here at the bottom edge of where I have nothing. Maybe I can actually not go up by 55, only by 40. I'll think about it. So, but that's basically what I'm doing. So I'm going to use a section here that is healthy, and I'm going to use a section here that's also healthy, including the double-sided. So this would be in later forks the mounting point for the rubber bungs, which this fork doesn't have. So yeah, this is the fork. We're somewhere in the ballpark, either 55 millimeters or 40, that I will just reposition the original suspension part in height, and I'm definitely gaining about, I should have something that's not so worn. Yeah, what about this? Yep. Yeah, roughly 55 millimeters for the wheelbase, and this is roughly 55 millimeter in height. So I'm still debating that. So the rust starts here, and I need to see how solid this is. I would really like to find my way into solid metal before I put a new hinging point without welding in the first place. So I'm going to double check whether 55 is good, or whether I should basically cut it straight and then weld a piece on it for the hinge so that, yeah, I can play around with it. But until I have put the wheel, I will not finalize that. Whether the weather. Now here's something else. This is 40 millimeters, and this is the window for the suspension to move around. I'm not quite sure whether this was necessary. I must cut minimum this much, and maybe that's how I'll start. Take it easy. I want this piece out. This is not wanting to come out. So since I'm going to cut this anyway, now might be the time. So that's why I'm filming, because I might cut this up and then can't go back. I wanted to show you that. So this is part 2. This is about lowering the fork in general. And that's that for now. I will upload this, and please, it will be a couple of weeks before I will actually film part 1. So far, thanks very much for watching. Take care. Be well.